Station discussion when it comes to renovation, replacement, and maybe considerations of another location besides the existing Hillcrest Fire Station where it sits right now. So I have a very brief part of the presentation, and then I'm going to turn it over to the chief, and the chief will come up and discuss with us a little bit about the data when it comes to Hillcrest Fire Station and efficiencies and effectiveness in our future city operations when it comes to fire calls. So as a highlight for you, and this is my one slide for this topic, council is interested in knowing a little bit more about what we had with regards to property that has been acquired for future municipal service building. We have highlighted here the properties that we currently own, which are in yellow. Total acreage, including the properties on the south side of A Street, are 2.52 acres. The north side acres all put together are 1.76 acres. So for a city population 40,000 with about 250, looking at what other municipalities and what the basic industry standard is for future city halls and what they've been constructed on, you're looking anywhere from 3 to 7 acres depending on how the building is constructed, what type of parking is surrounding the area, and what kind of needs from an employee perspective is present in the services that you're providing at that city hall. So we are just almost there at that 3 if we utilize both sites to get to that 3+ acres for a future municipal building when it comes to servicing a city our size. And with that, I'll pause.
Question, Brian?
So if I'm reading this right, currently we have the half acre of parking, and then the current city hall footprint with the parking is, I think, 1.26 acres, if I've done my math right. And you're saying that a city of our size typically is more in the range of 3 to 7 acres?
Yeah, if you're looking at siting a city hall and looking at doing that in the future, they're looking at sites anywhere from 3 to 7 acres, depending on what services are provided at that lot.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Rob?
So wouldn't that be completely dependent on how many stories the main structure is?
Yes, there's many variables that are associated with the amount of acres that you need.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And now I'd like to move forward with a brief discussion on Hillcrest. And with that, we'll have the chief come up.
Mayor, councilors, thank you very much for having me over here. Talk to you today a little about the Hillcrest Fire Station, some of the history there, some advantages, disadvantages that we have in our call volume and what we're currently looking at. Kind of an overview of the site there. We do have our training grounds there that is utilized not only by us, but it's a regional training facility for our tower, where people can come in and provide fire training. The police use it for training as well. Big advantage there. The station itself is basically sited and was built in 1971, excuse me. It's had some modest upgrades and some seismic work done to it, but basically it was originally moved from where the old city hall was at 4th and H Street. Major project we did was a seismic retrofit in 2013 to make it more seismically stable. The construction style of the tilt-up concrete was not very stable at all, and we've since kind of corrected that. We put some significant investment into Hillcrest, as you can see. We did some pavement reconstruction. We still have more to go. We have some major issues with the concrete and the front apron that is kind of cracking and has a tree root issue. We cut the tree out. The concrete needs to be repaired and some issues there. Significant seismic retrofit. Again, that was to kind of make the building safe, so we knew we had essential public safety available to us in the event of up to a Cascadia event. And then we've had some, emergency stuff, water line replacements, mechanical restorations, things that basically just to keep the station operating on a day-to-day basis. Looking a little bit into our call volume and how we actually spread out across the city, you can see our Hillcrest Station responds to approximately 1,738 calls. That was last year's static. And then, of course, our Redwood coming in at 1,009. And then our Parkway Station is really bearing the brunt of the calls. This is basically just the way we have the city divided up and the response times that we currently face. Again, the Parkway Station is running 51% of the calls, puts a heavy load on the crew and the apparatus that are working out of there. Hillcrest is running 31%. You can see it's kind of really close to running with our Redwood Station as well. One of the things we're looking at with all the data is how can we possibly improve that call spread out. So we reviewed the drive maps, and we talked about the possibility if we did move the Hillcrest Station farther south, what would that look like? Our response times really don't change. We still remain intact. Some of the advantages that we do have, though, is by actually spreading that call volume out. So this is kind of a call intensity map. It shows you where the calls occur. The darker the color, the more calls. And as you can kind of see on there, we have this area that's just on the northeast side of the city, kind of EF Street. And this has some really unique traffic issues. As you know, if you're coming from the Parkway Fire Station to get across over to A Street or anything actually up to D Street, you know, you're either coming up Mill Street and trying to come across, or you're going over to Beacon. It's just not a very good accessible area for the Parkway Fire Station. So we end up covering a bit of that from Parkway, but we end up dumping a lot of it to Hillcrest that really does have a longer response time. And this is kind of one of the things that we were looking at, is how that's basically being played out. So basically, what we're looking at is, you know, we want to be a good steward of the community's money. Do we continue to invest in the Hillcrest Fire Station and continue to improve it and make it livability issues there? Or do we look someplace else to better site the station and provide the community with something better? And again, the call to action today is explore alternative locations for the fire station, and then options for it, or take no action. Questions?
Questions? Brian, then Rob.
Thank you for the presentation. The first question I have is, it says here that one of the positive impacts or benefits would be sharing more of the load and reducing wear and tear on a specific unit at a parkway. When you're talking about a specific unit at a parkway, is that talking about the equipment or the people? Because I know, don't the people rotate stations? So I would assume you're talking about the equipment, but I'm not sure.
It's both. We currently have a shift bidding process, so they actually bid for the shifts. We don't rotate them around like we used to. So the crews that are there are usually the high drive crews that want call volume and do things. But it does put additional wear on them. We're very conscious of what their sleep rest ratio is. They do work 48-hour shifts, and while we know we're going to be up, we want to try and spread that out as much as possible on the people. And again, the same thing with the apparatus that are running out of there. That's where our truck runs out of. And so when we do have to switch into a different apparatus, we're running the truck out of there, which is putting additional miles on that. Again, the engines, we do rotate them to try and maintain the same amount of mileage, but it's just getting a heavy wear on everything that happens there.
Okay, so there is rotation on the equipment and the people at that station.
With the current shift bidding, it's their choice whether they would like to or where they fall out in the shift bidding process.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Rob.
So on the shift bidding, is that based on seniority, or how does that work?
Yep, it's based on seniority and position. We do it every year. That's per our, we had an MOU, I believe it's going into the contract currently. And so the engineers, firefighters in their specific ranks will bid which station they want based on their seniority. And we just go through the list in second, third, fourth, and then of course, you know, the newer folks just kind of end up where they are. We do reserve the right to move people for need. So if we have a specific opening on a shift, like we have a shift lieutenant position and we need to move somebody in there, we will move them, and we have that ability. We just notice them and do that. We currently have several of those that are in place, but otherwise it would just be the bidding process.
So, you know, when we talk about trying to be good stewards of the public's money and so forth, and balancing out workloads and wear and tear and things. So when we look at the call volume chart, I mean, to me, I don't know, the thing that jumps out maybe second most quickly is that, you know, the Redwood Station handles roughly 70% less call volume than our main station.
Yes.
So it would seem to me that, you know, if we want to be good stewards of the public's money, what can we do to to balance out the workload and wear load when we have a station that's literally doing 70% less work than another one?
I will caution that the call volume doesn't tell everything with the Parkway, or excuse me, with the Redwood station. That station is, because it's not toned as much, is utilized for move up and covering the city when other engines are on calls. Our concurrent call volume is rising rapidly, so there's a lot of time that they spend actually moved up into the city. When we built that station, we were looking at growth potential and where the city might be going. We built it kind of on the edge of that urban growth boundary, and we, are looking at currently expansion. Where is the city going? And it seems to be going in that direction. So I don't think necessarily it's a bad location. It was put there in sight of development heading that direction. Again, we balance our calls not necessarily on call volume, but on quickest response. And that's why that station is such a lower response, is just simply the geographic location of it. But it is utilized quite a bit for move ups.
Joel?
Thank you, Chief, for being here and explaining things to us. So there's things that we want and there's things that we need. Okay, and it's interesting, especially when money's a little tight, the things that we want, which are legitimate, and the things that we need are also legitimate. So in your mind, the Hillcrest Station and the condition of it, is that a want or a need?
There are some livability issues that are a need. The water system, repairing of the concrete ramps. There are several items on there that are basically to continue to function, it needs to have. The building itself, like I say, is structurally sound. We've made a big investment there, but what we haven't done is made an investment into the development of the facility.
Okay.
One of the big issues we had is when COVID hit, we didn't have separate living areas, and so we had to really do a lot of things. So looking down the road of what the requirements are, that's what we're.
Okay. So then the second question, I have three questions.
Yeah.
Second question I have then is under capital investments with the city, and this probably is a finance question, how much money do we have set aside if we wanted to refurbish Hillcrest Island Fire Station for that need?
You can, JC, if you want to, but I believe we have 50,000 in the capital expenditures for this year. How much? 100,000.
100,000?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the next question I had was how much, and you may not know this, but how much would it cost to meet that need?
We did a study a couple of years ago, and I apologize, I don't have that in front of me. It's one of the things I don't.
Okay.
But we did do a research on that, and like I say, I could get that to you. I just don't have it today.
Okay, that would be an important fact and truth about what we need to do, I think, versus a brand new station, which we all want, but I'm not sure we need it at this point in time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
DJ?
So, yeah, thanks. So if I'm reading this right, Hillcrest needs either to be renovated or relocated, and it's staff's recommendation to relocate. Is that correct?
That's one of the possibilities we're looking at, is do we want to continue to invest the money in that facility? That's a 1971 facility that is aging rapidly, or is that money better spent, developing something new in a better location than what it is currently? When we look at our growth, I don't see, we're not growing that direction. There's some geographic features, as you know, as a builder, building on this hill slope is expensive, and it just doesn't seem to be developing currently. When we look at our call volume, again, it's centered more toward the central core and looking at that response. So it's kind of basically trying to take the fiscal responsibility, the call response of it, and trying to balance things out. So where does that fit into it? It's that's why we're posing the question of where is our money best invested.
Sure, of course. So entertaining that we did relocate, and this is an open-ended question, would there be any benefit to the city to maintaining ownership of the Hillcrest Fire Station parcel and/or building in the event of a relocation?
I would say yes, and the fact that our regional training facility is there, or training tower, so it's not something we would want to walk away from. We definitely utilize that quite a bit. Is the building able to be utilized for something besides a living facility? I think that, there's a lot of options that are open there. It's basically, when we get down to it, it's the livability issues of a 1970s building that we're looking at with the plumbing, electrical, all those things that start going wrong, and where do we go from here?
Sure, thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, just to go back to Councilor King's question, in 2019, we got an updated estimate on what it would cost to do what we needed to at Hillcrest, to provide that to council, and that was $2 million to do what we did, and that was a 2019 number. So it's definitely gone up quite a bit from that. That's why this discussion, I think, is pertinent to some degree, is doing whatever we need to do to Hillcrest is going to be millions of dollars from a project perspective. And the question is, do we invest those dollars there at that site, or looking at the data that we have in front of us, it appears as though investing those dollars might be better served if we found another location that is a little more central, but still in the northern part of the community.
Joel, then Brian? Okay.
Oh, so then, a part of that discussion then, on that want of better serving the community in fire, which isn't a bad want, what is the estimated cost of a new station compared to the $2 million for upgrading a structure and a capital investment where we've already sunk a lot of capital?
So we can get you estimates. There's general estimates of at least $300 per square foot, depending on what kind of facility you're looking at. You'd be looking at multi-million-dollar project in order to build a new fire station. You're still looking at a multi-million-dollar project to refurbish Hillcrest. So we'd be more than happy to give you those numbers. Like I mentioned in the past, in 2019, we did provide those numbers to council, but we didn't take action at that time to refurbish Hillcrest. As we continue to grow and services are increased, we definitely are seeing that the data is showing that it may be better serving the community if we're going to make a large capital investment to have it at a different location.
And to make that determination, we need those numbers.
Brian?
Joel asked my question. Thank
Oh,
you, Joel.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, council, do you have conversation topics here? Brian?
I think I would appreciate it if that information that Aaron referenced about the cost in 2019 could be resent to council, and I would hope that that would include the scope of the work that was going to be done for that $2 million, so we can have a better idea of what that looks like. And then also, if you could provide some comparables maybe of stations either in the state or in the region that have been built, in the past few years, just so we can get a ballpark idea of what a new facility would cost. I think that would be very useful.
DJ?
Sure. Hillcrest Fire Station's been on strategic planning for some time, and so I'm seeing this is aligned with the greater goal of strategic plan. At the time that we put it on strategic plan, I don't think relocation was a consideration, but I'm seeing the consideration for relocation pertinent to the strategic planning goal. So I'm willing to align with staff's recommendation for relocation and also with strategic plan to pursuing that goal. So whatever we need to do to get to step 2 in this conversation, I'm willing to do.
Anybody else? Brian, then Vanessa?
Yeah, I forgot to say one thing. I just wanted to apologize to the fire department because I know the condition that station is in. We toured it 4 years ago, and I've wanted to get that renovation going for 4 years, and I apologize to you and your staff for that not getting done yet.
Vanessa?
I also would like to learn more about comparables in the state for stations that have been built recently, and I do support the idea of moving forward and looking and seeing what a relocation might cost and what that might look like, where that might be.
Aaron?
So, yeah, we'll definitely provide that. We can do that either in a memo or at a workshop and get you that information, and we'll do a comparison and give you what the last quote was back in 2019, what that scope was, and then provide you with a general idea of what it might cost if we were to build a new structure.
Rob?
So since it doesn't appear as if we have millions of excess dollars in our budget, what methods of financing that does staff have in mind when they're suggesting a new station?
Due to the likability of the fire department in general, I would think that this is a perfect project potentially to GO bond. especially realizing that the fire station currently is 50 years plus old. And so you're going to potentially have other facilities that the city has that you could potentially put in with that same GO bond.
Dwayne?
I definitely want to see the scope of how much it's going to cost. It seems like in our other meetings, the piece of property that's next door or across the street from the police station has come up. So, but I think we need to see all how much it's going to cost first before we see anything. I would agree that there's got to be a bond or something that people got to buy in because we don't have any money. So, I at least look, we can push this to another discussion for now. I think that's until we get some more information. So that's where I'm at.
All right, did anybody have any questions about the City Hall portion? Go ahead,
I
Jason.
do want to bring up one piece of information. If you're going to pursue a GO bond, bond counsel does recommend that you give like a 2-year lead time between when you want that construction to actually go forth so that you can start to educate the public, and there is some paperwork and other things that need to be done in the meantime. So the best case scenario or the best strategy is to kind of have 2 years in the making to make that all work.
Rob?
Yeah, I know that several councilors, or at least one, has already supported the idea of moving the station. I guess DJ supported that. I think that the very first thing that the public would ask is what would it take to refurbish the old one. So to be able to sell the new one, we'd have to know the difference in price for sure, and that would be true for me also. I need to know the difference.
Brian?
So regarding the City Hall portion of the presentation, I don't recall that this council has ever really discussed that plan or that topic. So I assume that direction has come from a previous council, and I'm not really up to speed on those discussions or how that came to be or what the plan is or the timeline for the plan or anything. So if there's, I don't know if maybe a memo kind of giving some of that backstory to council would be helpful, but right now I'm feeling pretty in the dark on that whole topic, other than the bit that was discussed today.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess I haven't personally heard a case for, being stretched beyond our space needs or what this building, or rather that building, I guess, next to us, can or can't do for us. So surprised that there weren't questions about that, but maybe other people understand it better than I do. All right, well, without further conversation, we ready to move on to the next topic? All right, next up is Caveman Pool.
Good afternoon, Council. Josh Hopkins, Park Superintendent, Community Development, here to continue the discussion on the Caveman Pool project. Subject and summary is a continuation of the City Council discussion on how to proceed with the Caveman Pool. It's in relationship to Council goals through maintaining and operating and expanding our infrastructure to meet community needs by appropriately maintaining and/or replacing an existing capital asset. So for the background on this, April 29, 2024, Council reviewed next step options for the Caveman Pool project. This included 2 pool designs, cost-saving features, potential funding options, and a potential partnership with the YMCA. On June 28th, 2024, Council received a memo that kind of outlined what a general obligation GO bond would be like with the process, costs, and things along those lines. Then on July 1st, council reviewed the funding options for the Caveman Pool project and a motion made by the Parks Advisory Committee for reviewing a renovation option to the current pool facility. At this workshop, council identified an $11 million target and directed city staff to review other funding sources to help fill in that gap. On July 11th, council received a memo regarding the Caveman Pool funding options. There were 3 options included in this memo with staff's recommendation for option A. This called for utilizing the current identified resources in combination with the GO bond. And on July 25th, city staff received a request to review what a $6 million pool target facility would look like by the August 5th workshop today. The direction that was provided to us was to look into just replacing the current pool, potentially adding a splash pad, slide, and diving board, and then minimal improvements to the rest of the facility while cutting out the expanded parking lot altogether. So we worked with RSA, our design consultant, to get in kind of what this would look like for it. For the scope of work, RSA decided we'd be looking at removing the existing pool shell and treatment and heating equipment, constructing a new 6-lane, 25-yard pool. The pool would be like the lap pool shown in our schematic design, and then, approximately 3-foot depth down at the shallow end, and then going out to the current deep end of 10-foot 5. And this would be a shotcrete design as opposed to the stainless steel walled option for cost-saving measures. It provides a 3-meter diving board, 2-meter dive platform, a flume slide with a dedicated splashdown area is connected to the pool to allow for the slide use without impacting the other lap lines. And then we did add an area for a splash pad with interactive toys involved in that. The splash pad is shown up there. We would probably, if we wanted to go this route, need to work with the Y to identify kind of the best location for that from an operational standpoint. We'd probably want to have some sort of fencing installed to kind of separate the splash pad from the pool itself, just because it's such a high traffic area. And then we were still planning for a few changes to the existing bathhouse pool equipment, and we did an assumption using an electric heat pump system. With the previous direction council provided, there were 2 options as far as heating goes with the electric options, and none of those were really chosen. I spoke about what the heating option was going to be, so we went with the more efficient electric heat pump system. And then for the bathhouse, the renovation's kind of unknown at this point. There'd just be some upgrades for ADA accessibility, ramping, and things along those lines. And then there was no new parking lot, and this assumed that most of the pool deck itself is going to need to be replaced anyways, just for the new piping and things along those lines, with the fencing remaining as is. So for the rough cost estimate of this, they started with a $6.5 million budget, put 1.3 into soft cost at 20%, leaving 5.2 available. And to come up with this estimate at the end of everything that was offered into this system, they came out with, still having $96,000 remaining. This is a very rough estimate. RSA wanted to be very clear on that. Essentially, to create this, they pulled information from the original ADG cost estimate for like the pool and things like that. But there are some things that they really just don't know what the cost would be, including renovations to the building as well as the spray park at $800,000, because those can fluctuate greatly. When we put the one in Riverside, it was about $800,000, and that was in 2018. So that's what came out of the rough cost estimate of the $6.5 million. Essentially, instead of having 2 separate vessels, you have one vessel. Trade-off of it is you don't really have that separation as opposed to the current thing. You lose full pool surfacing you currently have, but you are able to incorporate a lot of the amenities. And, if these estimates are something council is interested in pursuing, we can work with RSA to get more detailed in to see exactly how close they are to a reality. So just to review again, there was another alternative cost-saving option, and that was using Renesys and do a renovation for that. That included a circulatory gutter system, a PVC membrane pool decking, a 2-flume water slide, pool deck equipment package, that's your tables, chairs, sunshades, things along those lines. And that ballpark estimate came out at a little over $1 million. One of the things that was on that estimate originally was having a removable bulkhead. If we went this route, we would just leave the existing pool shell the way it is with the bulkhead that's in the middle and just line over that, so we wouldn't really need a removable one. This does not include the changes to the bathhouse or upgrades to mechanical room or the underground infrastructure repairs, but similarly, we could look at the AEG or ADG estimate to kind of get an idea what those costs would be in the future. For those cost alternative sample photos, you can see we've got the stainless steel gutter system that they'd install, as well as what the membrane liner would look like. There's an option of what the water slide looked like, and the PVC decking is shown as well. It essentially is a way to make it feel and look, for all intents and purposes, as a newer facility. Additionally, in the estimate we got back in 2022, there were a couple of other amenities that we never priced out because there was no real desire to move forward in that direction, including like a zip line feature as well as a rock wall feature. We never priced any of those options out, but they did confirm that, yeah, we have plenty of pool deck space if we're looking to do a cost-saving option, but still increase the amenities we'd have available at the pool. So for our cost implications, our current resources between ARPA, URA, and the LB code comes out at $6.3 billion. The URA, just to put it out there, we did get a recommendation from the consultant of potentially only utilizing 18% of the full project cost. With the resources needed in reviewing the options at the $6.5 billion target, we'd be looking at a small gap of about $165,000 to be able to meet that full 6.5 need. With the $11 million target, option A, it showed a gap of about $7.6 million that the recommendation was to fund through a GO bond. The reason that's so high is because instead of using the full $5 million from the URA, that recommendation was made with the 18% URA allocation. And then the renovation option with Renesis is just expected to be within the current identified resources that we have. So at this point, it's call actions at council discretion. Alternatives would be to move to a consent action or to, move to an additional workshop. Questions?
Council, what questions do you have? Brian?
Thanks, Josh. So regarding the two options you presented on, can you speak to life cycle? Like what is the expected life of each of these options?
So with the new pool, we'd be looking at, a typical 50 some odd year life cycle with other maintenance that occurs reoccurring if we're using shotcrete. It depends on what type of coating type thing we use for the shotcrete, whether it's plaster or just concrete. That's what kind of changes some of the ways we have to do the pool. We either reseal the concrete or we redo the plaster on like a 10-year cycle type of a thing. Similarly, with the Renesis option, the membrane liners themselves come with an industry 10-year warranty. Their expected life is 15 to 20 years. With that option, we'd really be just keeping the concrete vessel the way it is and putting a liner over it. So as long as the vessel is structurally sound, you're just replacing that liner option, which today's estimate's like $100,000 every 15 to 20 years. But operationally, the pool would be same life cycle as it is, as long as the concrete vessel itself stays sound. And then if you did need to make repairs, you're just making repairs to the bottom of the pool, and you don't have to get as in depth with them in the future. The other costs that come along with this is just the standard. Both sides have the same mechanical room type options out there for like boilers and things like that. You put those on reoccurring maintenance cycles, and depending on the appliance, 10, 20 years down the line, you're having to make some changes or upgrades and things along those lines.
Okay,
so they're similar, it's just the newer option is obviously the most longevity from the feature of, it's a brand new pool facility, you'd be looking at that. But with the membrane liner option, you're really looking at just replacing a liner.
Okay, and then both options, I think you said, have the same mechanical needs as far as piping and equipment, like it's pretty much the same for both?
With the membrane liner option, it'd be less because we'd be using the existing piping that's in the pool itself. We wouldn't be making changes to that. If we were to go down that road, what I probably would recommend doing is cutting out the main pipeline anyways, because we suspect there's leaks underneath the pool. So if we're doing that, we might as well cut that out too and then replace that pipe. Outside of that, the new pool, we have to tear everything out and redo a whole new piping system for it. We'd probably need some changes to the deck piping system for the water slide, but we did used to have a water slide there, so we'd have to explore to see if those pipes are still available.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, my question, because I wasn't at the URA meeting, and 18%, isn't there, should only recommend be spending only 18% per project? Is that correct, or?
I wasn't at the URA meeting. Maybe JC can answer that one.
I hope so.
So Elaine Howard came in and gave a presentation for the URA and some strategic planning. One of her recommendations and part of the genesis of the overall amended plan was that the sewer debt service and the water treatment debt service, we're only going to get 18% because 18% is the acreage of the URA. And so part of her recommendation doesn't mean that you have to go with it, that most public projects should probably stick with that 18% calculation, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Joel?
I had about 3 questions. So the URA funding with the state laws and the oversight, does that jeopardize at all the potential to bond future URA projects by the city?
I believe that was covered in the council memo that was sent on July 11th.
Can you re-ask the question again?
So that when we were with the consultant, she seemed to indicate that using URA funds for a recreational facility may jeopardize the potential for bonding of future URA projects.
I don't recall that being the case.
Okay.
I believe she said that that is a potential funding source for public projects. But there, I think maybe the piece that you're trying to connect is your future bond or debt issued could have a lower amount that you could potentially draw off of your TIF funds.
Sure.
So if you have $1 million as far as debt service payment required, and we're getting $2 million, obviously you've lowered the ceiling as far as the next project you can do.
Right. So when she said the white elephant in the room was the URA funding for the swimming pool, what did she mean?
From what I recall from the conversation, what she meant by that, and I can't speak for her, but I think she was talking about the available amount of funds that we have currently right now, and the white elephant in the room was if you utilize $5 million of it within the next year, what projects within the next 3 to 5 years will you also be able to accomplish, and by what financial means? And she was saying that it would be good to have clarity on how much funding of the pool is going to equate to coming from the Urban Renewal Agency, and that would help with the overall planning of your next 5 years of urban renewal dollars.
Okay, thank you. So then the next question I had was in the budget for the pool, the aquatic section, it talked about the number of days that were actually open, and it was 70 and 65, and I think one year was 62, and some of those were COVID years. That affected more, not the opening, but the amount of people that went there. And then the amount of people that went there were between 100 and 150 on the average. Is it feasible to expand that season of operation from 70 days to, say, even a small increase of 90 days?
So when it comes to the seasonal operation for any outdoor pool in this region, it does coincide with a decrease in season anytime you have a major smoke event or anything like that, which is part of the reason why we've had such a, it's not just COVID, but over the last few years, we've had a decrease in the number of days. As far as extending the season, it's a topic that's been discussed several times. The biggest issue we have with extending the season has to do with lifeguard availability. The YMCA's lifeguards for the pool come from the high school and other high schools from our region, and the kids are back in school at that point. So they do have another facility they maintain year-round, And it's always been that fluctuating, like, well, everyone would love to have a 90-day season, especially if we've got good weather. But if we opened up early in May, we may end up having to close half of May due to rain or some other type of weather event. Same thing if we stayed open later. But the biggest operational issue is with that lifeguard. In the aquatics industry in general, there is a nationwide lifeguard shortage. Every place struggles with it. Even in college towns, we struggled with lifeguards.
Okay, the next couple of questions I had were budget questions. I looked under the aquatics budget for 2025, and mainly operations and general fund. Let me see here. I should have had this printed out for you. General fund resources, we're only about $95,000 per year for the pool, and it was projected to be an increase in the future to that from the general fund. And then my understanding is that the Y gets the money to operate the pool from the general fund and also from fees. And my understanding, I just want to confirm that equals about let me put my glasses on, about $500,000 a year.
So we have an agreement in place with the Y. It's a contract we do yearly. Essentially, the way the agreement works is the YMCA operates the pool, provides staffing and everything along those lines. And as fees roll in, they take their portion of that from it. And then at the end of the year, whatever is above that level that costs the Y operationally, they split it. I think it's 60-40 at this point, where 60% goes back to the YMCA and 40% comes to the city. The city also makes a payment to the YMCA at the beginning of every season of about $7,500 to help get them started for that operation. So on the city staff side, when it comes to the cost of operating the pool, we basically, it's the $95,000 because that payment of $75,000 or $7,500 is incorporated into the operational budget. And then at the end of the season, if the YMCA at the end of taking their cost of operating the pool out, end up with $5,000 in excess revenue from that, then we split that 60-40.
Okay, so then doing some math, and I did some math, I can share it with the rest of the council. The operating costs are about $27 per person per day, and it's if the user was going to pay the full amount, $27 per person per day. That would be unaffordable for many of our residents, so it's obvious that the city has to allocate some more money to do that. The private sector, at least the nonprofits, and we'll discuss that on agenda setting time, but it's much less. Would you agree with that assessment? So that the Y membership per day is a lot less than the let me see here, than the $14 per person per day.
So I'm not sure exactly how much it costs the Y to operate their pool, but I imagine they have some variation in cost recovery. We don't have that in the city for our recreational programs, but basically anyone that's operating a pool is generally operating at some form of a loss. It's just the fees are structured around how much community good that does, how much it aligns with your mission, and then what you're willing to subsidize for that. At this point, we have the $5 day entry fee as well as like a season pass and things like that that's built into the city's fee structure, and the city's in control of the fees that the Y charges. The YMCA charges like $12 for drop-in use of their current pool facility. They do have, you know, a membership fee, but the membership fee is for the whole facility type of a thing.
Sure, sure. And if we had a membership fee for the Y, it would be about it'd be about $306 per person for the whole summer period. The other question I had, and I'm just looking at facts here, because it can be somewhat confusing and we need to deal with facts. I don't know, and I don't know if you know, but I'll ask the question. So when you have a deeper pool, liability requirements probably increase the staffing levels and increase the liability insurance, which is may or may not be a big deal, it depends on the revenue you bring in. Is the Y willing to staff and the liability limits, who pays for that? Does the city, again, pay for that out of the general fund, or is that something that the Y covers? And is the Y, I also heard, I don't know if it's true or not, I just need to know what the facts is. Is the Y willing to operate the pool with a high dive?
So at this point, with the 6.5 million option and the Renaissance option, neither one of those actually increased the depth of the pool. The $11 million one would increase the depth of the pool. And then, so the current pool would operate the way it is with those. And then as far as the liability goes for lifeguarding, OHA sets the requirements for how many lifeguards. It's based off of occupation and based off of pool like size and things along those lines. And the YMCA is currently not having staffing issues outside of people, typically not showing up or potentially lower staffing times as well. But when it comes to the liability side, I believe we did back about a year ago reach out to CIS about putting in a high dive, diving board, and those types of features, and they reported it wouldn't really change anything on the city side. I'd have to look at the agreement, but the pool might be a weird facility that's kind of double covered from both the YMCA and the city's insurance.
So we don't know if it would increase the staffing or not.
I don't know if it would increase the staffing. We'd have to look at the OHA requirements for that.
And we don't know if the Y is willing to do that.
I believe at this point, the Y has been a great community partner, and they're going to be willing to do anything they can to keep this pool operating for us.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a good fact. Okay, that's what I have right now.
I think just to clarify, the $6.5 million plan has a 2-meter dive platform?
It has a 2-meter dive platform and then a 3/4 meter recreational board.
Okay, and neither one of those are a high dive per se, right?
No.
Okay, thank you. Rick, I think you had a question?
Josh, with the warmer weather right now, has the pool seen additional use compared to other years? And do we have any idea how many people are coming per day? So when we're looking at a facility, we know we're looking at something that the public still wants.
So anecdotally, yes, it looks like we have had really good season so far. We've had very limited smoke days for the most part. We've had lots of heat, so that generally helps get people out to the pool. As well as when we met with the Y CEO, Jay Berry, early before the season started, he mentioned that, they were planning to do a bunch of different types of programming this year to really increase the people coming to it. And they've been doing that, and that's actually been very responsive to the community, like the movie night and things along those lines. As well as they've got a couple of other events they're planning throughout the course of the year or for this season. So we have seen an increase in usage, but we don't have the numbers. Basically, they get us that towards December when we're finalizing everything of what that usage was. Last season or last few seasons, it's averaged about 130 people per day. But right now, it looks like we're above that average, just anecdotally from what we see from staff and what we've heard from the community and things like that. But again, we're all still crossing our fingers for everything from smoke to weird weather and everything else like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, I just had a question about the platform. I know when we were originally talking about it, I think we were talking about something higher than 2 meters. 2 meters is only about 6 feet. And I know the platform at the Amazon pool in Eugene is significantly higher. I don't know exactly, but it might be 5 meters. It's up there. So I was just wondering why it's 2 meter in this plan, and what are our options as far as like having that be higher than 2 meters with the consideration of pool depth?
So 2 meters is what RSA worked with to create this thing based off of how to make a $6.5 million target work. That included basically keeping the current 10.6 depth that we have. If we were to go higher, we would likely need to increase that depth up to, I think it was that 12.6, and that would just increase the cost, and that would change how they were able to come up with that 6.5 million. If we were to go that route, we would be looking at a more expensive overall pool project, and then we're either cutting some other amenity out, like the splash park or something like that, to be able to fit that. Again, the big limiting factor for this pool is just having that one single vessel for use. So we also have a slopage issue too. When you're going from the shallow end to the deep end, there is regulations on how quickly those things can drop for safety reasons. And we just really need to explore it more if we wanted to go higher for that depth, and might end up extending the pool from 25 yards to something else to be able to meet the slope requirement.
Okay, thanks.
DJ and then Joel?
I appreciate everybody's questions.
I said DJ and then Joel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Yep.
ahead, DJ.
Got a simple one for you here. Spray ground, what is that? Is that like what we already have at Riverside and Morrison Centennial?
That's a good way to look at it, but we'd probably look for a couple of different types of features. And normally, it's a little odd, because normally for an aquatics facility that's going to have some variation of a spray park incorporated into it, they make like that zero depth entry like the $11 million project was, so that you've got, you know, a foot or so of water where those features are, which slows down play, gives kids something to do while another pool's closed down to like lap swimming because the high dive's going or some variation like that. In this case, it was thrown out there, hey, we'd like to have a splash park type feature in there. And so we put it in there, but we haven't gone through for like conceptual designs to see what that would be. That's why in his estimate, RSA provided, they put in there, you know, it's really order of magnitude, $800,000, because depending on what you guys are envisioning for that area, either increases, decreases, or stays in line with that cost.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Joel?
This is my last question, Josh, and you've done very well at answering them. So the All Care, for example, as a nonprofit, has an agreement with the Y for people on Medicaid to use the facility free. And so everybody goes out there and uses it free, and there's other social services offered. What is the potential for the Caveman Pool to offer those same type of services to those in our community that are in need?
That greatly depends on what type of pool we build. If we were to build like more of a warm water pool that was like shallower for water walking, those would be types of services people would be interested in doing. But as a single vessel, with the way it is, people can still do that. We've never, as far as I know, been approached by like All Care or anyone like that. The YMCA agreements that they have with their other community partners aren't relevant for the Caveman Pool's operation. YMCA members still pay the city's rate when they go to the Caveman Pool. They don't get like a discounted rate, or it's not covered into their YMCA rate. So it's kind of two separate things right there. But anything we build, I mean, I know right now there's people that go to the Caveman Pool when it's weather's nice for, you know, therapy, lap swim, or anything else like that, so.
In this $6.5 million option, does that include, you know, we've talked a lot about, I guess, kind of some of these system failures that we've been having with Caveman Pool over the last few years, so the heat pump and different infrastructure. Is that included here to resolve those issues?
Yes, so in that estimate that was in there, there is line items for, you know, the building side of things and what kind of the estimate would be. And they pulled that out of the original estimate we received, because we'd be looking at the same equipment and everything like that for upgrading that mechanical room. We just wouldn't be tearing down the full mechanical room to upgrade it at that time. So what we'd be doing is going in, doing some concrete repairs, things like that, and then figuring out what we have to do structurally to get it working with the facility that is currently on site, whereas the 11 million was complete tear down and rebuild. So, you know, we may end up with a few different features than what we originally were planning to price out, but we would be addressing any of those pumping issues. And we do the same thing with the Renesis option as well. We'd go in and basically just replace the boiler, heat exchanger, and things along those lines.
Okay, I guess I'm not seeing where that's built in on the $1 million plan. It says that it does not include upgrades to the mechanical room or underground infrastructure
That would be
repairs.
for the Renesis option. that was just what those features would cost, but it didn't include any of the other stuff that we'd be doing out there as a part of that project to get the pool up and going. For the $6.5 million option, it's included into the selective building demolitions and things along those lines is where they put those in. Yeah, because the cost difference between just doing an all-electric versus a heat exchanger, I think, was only like 10 grand or something, so it made more sense to go with the more efficient option in that regard, based off the original estimates. But so you have two different kind of things in front of you. One is the rough estimates of the $6.5 million option, which does incorporate changes needed to the mechanical room, and the other one was the Renesys, which is just what Renesys provided, saying how much the liner and all these types of things would cost, and then the city would still need to upgrade the mechanical room, but it's just far less than the $6.5 billion target to do that for that option.
Yeah, I guess about the Renesys, I guess I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at here. So it's got, it's basically upgrading the pool itself so that it has new gutters and new deck and a membrane, which would help with leaks, and it would cover the current shape of the pool, I guess?
Yeah, so with the Renesys option, you'd be looking at a new recirculatory gutter system. To do that, they'd be doing some deck work and things like that to put it in. One of the spots we know we're leaking out of the pool is in our gutter system, along with the vessel seams and probably the main pipe going underneath the pool, things along those lines. So that would take care of that issue. The PVC membrane liner would then, basically, it's a leak-proof 60 mil type liner that is going to cover the pool, and they can make that shape to pretty much any pool design you have. So we wouldn't need to do any of the large scale site demo work on the big or the deep end or the big end. We would use the current vessel itself, and they would attach the liner to the current footprint of that vessel. That being said, we would probably go ahead and cut out that main pipe and replace it. It has been done in 30-something years, so it's not a bad thing to do at this point.
Okay, so this $1 million is, I mean, I guess I would characterize it as a Band-Aid in the new water slide. Is that fair? That it's not really fixing the mechanical issues, it's just getting our current footprint of a pool back into a better condition, but we're still going to have all those old.
The exterior pool would look exactly brand new type of a thing. The other side of that with the mechanical rooms and stuff is something we'd handle separate with that or in conjunction to if we were to go with this route. So we would still make the necessary upgrades to the mechanical room, but instead of, $2+ million, not counting site work, demolition, and things like that for shrinking down to just a 25-yard pool, we would have the current pool surfacing and the membrane liner, PVC decking, and everything like that makes the exterior look like it's a brand new facility. It's often the option that councils go with once they've reached this point. Medford did the same thing, or Ashland did the same thing with the Daniel Myers pool. They looked at rebuilding that several times for quite a while, and in the end, they ended up doing a $60,000 liner from Renesys, and they're extremely happy with that because it addressed all the other issues they had, and then they did separate costs to upgrade the boiler and things along those lines.
Okay, so the $1 million option is easily another $1 million, maybe, of infrastructure, mechanical work.
Somewhere around there wouldn't be too far off, I wouldn't think. 1.5. It really depends on how in depth we get with decking, or not decking, but like the piping and stuff. We'd have to go out to bids for all that stuff. As far as the boiler room and that, we could look at Renesys, or not Renesys, the original upgrade costs for like what that equipment would be and things like that. And then in the boiler room itself, we would just be doing some rust mediation on the piping, which is still fine. It's just rusty, so it's just mediating the rust and then repairing some of the concrete.
Okay, and then you just mentioned something a minute ago about a 25-yard pool. Is that the length of the current pool?
No. With the new option for the 6.5, it is a single vessel 25-yard pool with about a 600 square foot cutout for the drop slide entry area type thing. The current pool in that area is about 25 yards for the deep end, and then we also have the shallow end as well, which is, an additional.
Okay, the small pool.
Yeah.
So the main pool is approximately the same size, and it's still long enough to do lap swimming or whatever people would need to do. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Brian?
I was just curious, how old is that Renesis cost estimate that we have?
The first one, we received the proposal where the pictures came from was June 4th, 2022, and then the cost estimate I asked for, again, the one we're looking at now, last month when the PAC made their motion, so it's a month old.
Okay, thanks.
DJ?
So the rough sample site plan with that little appendage where the water slide is that also a shallow end, or is that just a receiving end for the water slide? I guess the purpose of the question is because I see the shallow pool heavily utilized at the Caveman Pool. So I think if we were to go that area, the question being, is that area also a shallow pool area for people to enjoy?
Yeah, that'd be one of the shallower areas for the pool. Essentially, you'd, have that spot in the middle there where it kind of cuts off from, the main 25 yards goes from 3 to 10.6. At some point in there, you hit that 5-foot depth and you run a line across, and that extra 600 feet or so would also be included in that shallow end.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying that.
Brian?
So on this rough plan that they gave us to look at today, is there a potential to take the spray ground and incorporate it into that end of the pool so you can have a zero depth entry while also having the splash pad kind of area and just incorporating that into that end of the pool?
There is obviously the potential to do that. We did that with the original design for the separate pool. It's just they were working on how they could build this for under $6.5 million. If we're looking to incorporate that and we still want to stick with the $6.5 million mark, we're looking at eliminating some other features, or it could just end up just not being feasible at 6.5. And then, you may have to increase the target at that point.
Okay, thanks.
Questions? No more questions at the moment? Okay, discussion? Joel?
Well, I have the same thoughts. First off, we need to deal with reality and what are the numbers, and we need to make a good decision for the future of our community, which I think we all do, and we are all on board to do that. The next thing I think of is the same question as for the fire station. What do we want versus what do we need? And to me, in the pool, it's a little different answer than it is with the fire, or it is with the police, or that it is with the other essential services that the city serves. We all want all these things, but we don't need them. And especially if there's other nonprofits that provide the same service year-round and provide social services as well. I really do think we need to deal with the facts and not just what we want.
Rob and then Brian.
So actually, I had a question before my comment. So, Josh, thanks. So, and it's for council too. So we've got the main pool here, the lap pool with all that. I'm going with the 6.5 kind of new proposal. And then next to that, we've got the splash pad in yellow. So, DJ just mentioned the shallow pool, which currently now does get, whether it's little kid swimming lessons, formal or informal, it does have adult exercise stuff going on in there. And if we, as a council, decided that, a separate shallow pool was as important or more important as a splash pad, what would the price difference be for exchanging, say, a splash pad to a little exercise pool?
So, when we started this project back in 2019-ish, there was that focus on 2 separate pool vessels so that we were able to have mixed use priorities and things like that. The shallow end of the Caveman Pool is heavily used, just like Council Frazier said. It's one of the main spots for anyone taking their younger kids. If anything, I've had complaints by parents that it's not shallow enough, because I think it starts at 3.5 instead of 3. So that is one of the big features we have. The current 25-yard that you're looking at from the Renaissance proposal does incorporate a shallow end, just not as much of a shallow end as compared to what the community is used to, which could create kind of an issue with feedback. As far as the cost differential between operating or including a splash pad or just a separate shallow end pool, they're not that far off from each other depending on what you choose to do with the splash pad. We'd have to look back at the ADG estimates, but I believe both pool vessels were around that $2 million mark. So if we were to pull out, some of the spray features and things like that and make that secondary pool vessel, made tweaks to that, it could get lowered, to some level that is close to what that splash pad would be. But even with the splash pad at $800,000, that is very much so a rough estimate depending on not just what you guys want to do with that area, but also just in general construction. Splash pads are not inexpensive systems, and they do come with their own piping recirculation systems that we'd have to keep in mind. So again, council can choose to decide, oh, we do still want 2 separate vessels. We could look at that from the $6.5 million target and see if RSA is able to get something that shows 2 separate vessels. The request was for, replacing the current pool and then also incorporating a splash pad, and this is kind of what we were able to do in the 10-day turnaround we had.
Thank you. So, I guess that would lead me to the comment with, council would, if we wanted to go with this, roughly the $6.5 million option, essentially what age group are we trying to focus on in that, in the square footage where the splash pad is now? Clearly, while they're fun, that the age group of, we'll say, 50 or 60 and up is not going to care that much about a splash pad, more than likely. But yet, I know that as far as different types of exercise, some of the older people or rehabbing people, even if they're younger, would value that. I also just wanted to make the comment that I want to thank whoever it was that requested staff review what $6.5 million would buy us, and I'm really very pleased that a very large percentage of what most of councilors' concerns were for a new pool here seemed to be able to be had for roughly the amount of dollars that we currently have allocated. So I'm really very grateful to whoever it was that made that request of staff to come up with today's new proposal.
Brian and then DJ.
Yeah, I'll first reflect Rob's sentiment. I appreciate whoever brought this request forward to staff to get us a pool that is within the budget that we have available, because we all know we were way over budget. Staff went back and crafted an option with RSA that fits within our budget. That is the most pool that we can get for our budget. So I really appreciate that. I'm not particularly interested in trying to put Bondo and duct tape on the existing pool facility. It's, I think, about 70 years old, and, would it be fine with a liner and everything? Sure, it would be fine, and then we keep replacing liners, but I think the more prudent way to go is to build as new a facility as we can that will last a half a century for the community, that we don't have to keep going back and putting duct tape on over and over again. So given that we have this option that largely checks most of the boxes that we wanted with the $11 or $12 million pool, we're giving up the new bathhouse and we're giving up a couple other things, but the essence of what we want is here. So there's obviously some details that need to be worked out, but I would be in favor, generally speaking, of moving forward with this plan. I think that this pool is very important to the community. It's been a community staple for 70 years. It's the community's only outdoor pool. Generations and generations of families and kids have used it, and I'm not interested in seeing it go away. Thank you.
DJ.
Apologies, I do have another question for you. and it just so happens to be probably one of the most difficult questions to answer in the construction industry. So, timeline of construction. Do you believe at this time that it would be in the realm of possibility to do construction on our $6.5 million sample in the off-season so that we wouldn't miss a summer season for pool operations?
No.
Okay.
Basically, especially if we're using the shotcrete construction, it is a longer construction timeline. We do have the ARPA allocation deadline for December of this year for under contract. We'd be able to meet that type of thing, no big deal. And we can try to start construction. Normally what we do is look at it based on how long the permitting through the state and everything takes like that to start construction. Either maybe we decide we're going to lose part of one season and do full construction as soon as we can, or we're going to lose like half of it, 2 seasons type of thing, and that just kind of comes on how you want to do it. But you're looking at, 10 plus months, 12 months more for that type of construction.
Sure. Thank you for that realistic answer. I appreciate it. Let's see. I'm going to tend to agree with the mayor about, and DeLaGrange about, we are so far beyond liners and pretty gutters. And at this point, my main concern, if for the sake of conversation, is mechanical and infrastructure. And if we can't do that with whatever we choose to do, then I don't think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I appreciate the budget first discussion. That being said, it's in the realm of possibility to build a $6.5 million pool. I think it's an asset to the community, and I'm ready to pull the trigger.
Rob, then Joel.
Yeah, I agree with what DJ just said, and I think we were reminded earlier today when we talked about the fire station, Hillcrest. We hear about all kinds of underground water line issues, some of which have been repaired, some of which still need to be repaired. We also heard with this pool that we seem to think we know where some of the piping is leaking. We don't know where others of it is leaking. I mean, why on earth would we try to, as Brian said, duct tape that together? It's just going to be an potential ongoing aggravation, problem, and expense. So to me, I want to rely on essentially very, very little, if none of the existing piping, and I'd like to see a new facility there that could go for another 50 years or more. But I agree. I'd be willing to move forward with deciding about maybe the splash pad versus a smaller exercise pool or whatever, and some other smaller details, but I'd be willing to move forward with it pretty much right away.
Joel?
So I got to go back to my original question, do I want this or do I need it? And I think of when I was younger, we didn't go on vacations, we didn't go to France, we didn't go to islands off of Southern California. We went camping in Agnes, and we lived in a house of 800 square feet with 3 kids. And because of that, my kids have a trajectory today that is much more financially viable. And so as I look at the future of the city, what is more financially viable for our kids and our city as we move forward, given the situation we're in budget-wise? And because of that, I want these things too. I want to go to France. I want to go to Catalina, but I didn't because I believe in the future, and I think we need to make wise investments. So I would be willing to go with some kind of stopgap, whether it's up to the 6.5 million. That seems like an awful lot, especially because it's not competitive with the private sector that can provide an even better facility with social services and fill that need. And history certainly plays a big part. The history of the Caveman Pool, is it worth $5 million or $12 million? Obviously, it's not worth the $12 million. I think we all agree on that. To preserve that history as an active pool. So that's where I stand.
Vanessa?
I'm also in support of moving forward on the $6.5 million option.
Rick?
I'm not in favor of 10, 11, or $12 million, and I really appreciate staff bringing forward this proposal. I think it has a lot of merit. I'm just, my only hesitancy, I want to make sure the mechanical equipment will be adequate to handle this and the piping, because I feel that's our water loss, and if we're having cavitation underneath the pool, could be a leaking pipe down there. And so I just, I'm in favor, but I guess I feel I want to make sure all my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Dwayne?
Well, I think I'm the only one that owns a pool here, and I don't think there's any way you're going to build this without new equipment. It's out of code today. I would just assume that just by knowing. So I don't even see how you can reuse anything in there. Just a personal opinion. When they built this pool, the piping they use today is different. So I don't understand why there's even discussion really. You have to replace it. The pumps are variable speed pumps. They're all different. I do have a little concern with that the heat pump is the best. I mean, electricity costs are going up at 18%, I think, next year. I think solar is cheaper, but I'd have to see. I'm not an expert. You know, I'm just kind of guessing here a little bit. I have solar in my pool, and I'll tell you, it was 85 degrees yesterday. So, I mean, I'm just my experience. We're looking at mini pumps, actually, this size pool. So, and a lot of this just seems like very rough estimate. So I do like the 6.5 better than the 11 million, because I thought we were never going to get a pool because you were going to bond it, and that's what I wanted to do. I'm like, bond it because I didn't want to spend any more money, honestly. I don't think we have the money to spend. I do think we have a fire station that's just a couple years older than me, and it needs some work, so I think we should be looking at saving some money. So if we could do it for under 6.5 and everything happens, I mean, I think that's good. And I just tell you, my thoughts are changed a little bit, because I had a friend that's a single mom, and I took her 2 small kids there, and I saw the pictures, and it just kind of changed my mind a little bit, to be honest with you. You know, I was like, oh man, she took her kids there. Maybe she should have called me and took them to my house, but I was really impressed that she was taking her kids to the pool. And so I was like, well, if someone does use it that I know. And so it obviously is good for some people. So that's where I'm standing today.
All right, sounds like we have strong interest in moving forward with a $6.5 million plan. So let's have the design engineer work on that some more. I think it could be worth considering. We've had, you know, what our options are for spray ground, 0 depth, 3, you know, shallow end, because it's possible that the design engineer just didn't think about making this one larger pool that, you know, that does the 0 depth entry rather than having a separate spray ground because of the way the question was posed. But nevertheless, it sounds like council's interested in the $6.5 million option. DJ?
Yeah, I think you did address it, but I think some further conversation about like actual design, spray park, shallow pool, et cetera, within the confines of the budget might be appropriate. But I'm this close to saying, let's go for it. So do we anticipate having a little bit more conversation about design?
You can keep talking about it, sure.
Oh, now?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I guess my idea would be to have the design engineer come back. They obviously put together a very rushed plan because this was like 2 weeks ago, you know, that they got asked the question. So I would just have them, you know, flesh it out a little bit more. And I do think, you know, with the low shallow end, I guess having a large shallow end, or separate spray ground or that 0 depth, you know, they were trying to solve one problem, but they may not have presented us with all the options that we could get for $6.5 million. So that's what I would ask them to do is, you know, is there any other options for $6.5 million, or is this what it needs to be?
Got it. Yep. I don't think now is the time, but I like the direction you're on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, I was just going to add, next time we talk about this, I think previously there was one of the line items in the cost that talked about how much it would cost to add the additional depth to the pool. So I think we already have that piece, but also getting an estimate for, if the platform is not 2 meters, if it's 4 meters or 5 meters, what kind of additional cost there is, like the incremental cost for having that be a little bit higher.
Okay, yeah, I guess part of the original question here was just, what can we get, and then in what ways might we be able to add onto it in the future? So if we made the pool 12 feet for now, and then later could add a high dive, it doesn't all need to be added at the same date but anyway, this overall design sounds like everybody kind of likes the idea. I'm not a single mom, but I do have 2 kids who are 23 months apart, and I took them to the pool by myself many, many, many times. And having a 0 depth or spray ground is really nice when you have toddlers, so that you're not just like lugging 2 kids under your arm. Rick?
So I just want some clarification. When I'm looking at this sheet here and the proposals that's been put forward to us, the pool equipment renovation or replacement of up-to-date pool equipment is not included in here?
It is. I think that the mechanics are included in the $6.5 million plan, but it's using the existing building, whereas the $11 million plan had a completely new building. It was actually in a slightly different location too, but so there's some, you'll see like building renovations, some bare minimum practical renovations are in there, as well as the mechanics.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And this one is also a little less ambitious in that the other plan had 2 pools. One was like entirely dedicated to being 0 depth and having some, some of the fun features. And so this kind of brings it back to 1 pool footprint. Josh?
So Rick, just to answer your question, because it's not really clear in the estimate, so one of the things I did reach back out to RSA when we got it was, hey, what's our mechanical room look like with this? And they said that the pool costs from ADG, including the piping and equipment associated with the pool chemical treatment, et cetera, he did say that they do need to pick apart that estimate a little bit more to come up with some allowances for the various equipment and reworking and replacement of that. And it would be needed to be done anyways for the pool heating option that we chose. But overall, it's expected to be within that 6.5 target.
I think we could probably use some more information on solar too. That was something we had discussed early on. So I don't know if solar was adding, to the cost or just switching out the system, but even if you could just give us a ballpark on how much more it would cost, if it costs more, that sort of thing. Could be good. All right, anything else? All right, next topic today, agenda review. I think we're done with the pool. Thank you, Josh. Just actually, before we completely move on, just to remind the council of the timeline, because we are working with ARPA dollars in that Caveman Pool. We do need to have contracts in place by the end of the year if we're going to use ARPA funds, and then we would have 2 years, 25 and 26, for construction. So we need to make decisions sooner rather than later, but we have a few months. Although I guess we won't be digging this year, but we just need to get the contract in place by the end of this year. So we can't ask too many more rounds of questions, I guess is what I'm getting at here. We are doing a meeting this Wednesday night. It had originally been canceled, but on Wednesday night we're going to be discussing our time, place, manner, and locations for possible places to have homeless people camping. And it looks like there's just a consent calendar item for a Collison multimodal path as well. And that's all that's on the agenda for the 7th. And then on August 16th, I'm just having an informal meeting with some of our social service providers. I know Val had expressed some interest in coming to that, as she has in the past. Any of you are welcome to come. It's not a council meeting, and if you want to come, maybe let staff know, just so we can keep a head count on whether there's a quorum issue. August 19th will be our next workshop. So we have rebuilding, which is the building, the cottage in Riverside Park, creating a police and fire advocacy effort was something Val had kind of spearheaded, and then a second quarter work plan update. Any questions about any of that? No. Okay, and then looking out into the future, is there anything else that you wanted to get on the agenda that you don't see here? Joel?
So the one thing I come back to, and this is, I think, my third request, but we had the Y presentation, and I think there's some misunderstanding about the information needed for it to come back to the council. It was on the, my understanding, it was on the legal interpretation of whether we needed to reimburse the park fees because it was parkland. The YMCA is ready to go. It's a good deal. It's 1/10 the price of what we just discussed. It provides a good service to the community, has a lot of membership, serves the lower class people, has a lot of social services. We need to get it on the agenda. And I'm not sure what's keeping it from being on the agenda, but we need to remove those barriers and get it on the agenda.
So you're saying that the YMCA has a formal proposal now that, okay, maybe they need to work with staff?
My understanding is Brad's in conversations with the CEO for the Y, and that's what they're looking for. That's what we're waiting for and looking for was ultimately their final ask when it comes to property size that they'd be looking at. It looks like Oregon revised statutes states that it would need to be reimbursable to the city because it's for public infrastructure, public recreational facilities, and the definition of public is public lands, not public meaning a nonprofit or a for-profit that has a use.
Right, which is great. That means we get to pay ourselves, so that's great.
Yeah, so staff has been in contact with them, and we've talked about this repeatedly at the
So
agenda
when
sessions.
can we schedule it, Aaron?
Well, I'll ask Brad to continue to have that conversation with the Y chair, and when their Y chair and Brad are ready, then we'll ask for it to be scheduled. Brad's out this week, so I don't have him to be able to tell you exactly where we are in that process.
Okay, because I was told a month ago from the Y that they were ready and they were waiting on the city's legal interpretation.
Okay, yeah, they've been in touch with Brad. We've talked about it. So anything else? All right. I guess we need a motion to adjourn our, yep, go ahead.
I just had a question that I wanted to ask Aaron so he can hopefully answer it Wednesday night. Is now a good time?
Sure.
Okay. So with regards to one of council's proposed sites, the 7th Street site next to the fire station that requires the demolition, I didn't understand. The last time we spoke about it at that workshop, it didn't make any sense to me that, you know, one of the reasons you cited that it would be tough to expedite that process is because of the permit time. And I don't understand how the council working through the city manager can't move our permit to the top of the pile, so to speak, to get it acted on quickly. And it just didn't make any sense that 60 days and long permit time in this case, it didn't make any sense to me. Can you elaborate? Do you want to elaborate Wednesday night or?
Sure, no, I can provide some information, and Jason will answer that, but I tell you, when it comes to applications, whether it's a city or it's a public or private individual, we treat all of those the same and try to expedite every application that comes through the city. So giving the city preferential treatment is something that we do for everyone. We try to provide preferential treatment. But with regards to the timelines of the permittings, Jason has a better perspective on that, and he'll be able to provide you an update.
Yeah, because of the size of the project, we still have to get bids. We can't just hire somebody to go do it. We were finalizing the bid package. It's ready to go this week. We just received it from the design engineer. We've already completed the hazardous materials survey and identified the areas that have to be abated. We have to get in there and abate the areas where there's asbestos ahead of the demolition. So we've got it on the timeline. I think we'll beat the 2 months, but there's still some processes to go. The permitting is just one phase of that one. It is an over-the-counter permit, or what we call an over-the-counter permit, so we'll be able to turn in an application and walk away with a permit in, 30 minutes.
Thank you for the clarification on the permitting especially, yeah.
Brian,
Motion to adjourn
into executive session.
into executive session.
Thank you. Seconded by Vanessa. All in favor of adjourning the workshop, moving into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.